What's up and good morning, guys. Welcome back to part 5 of the Rhino Ranch custom modern shed project. Just look at that beauty right there. Look at that. This thing is really starting to come together. I'm pretty excited for this. It is a lot of work, but man, am I happy to have Abel help me on this project versus the last couple of things that I have framed solo. But this morning we have had on and off rain, so I haven't really filmed much, but we have been working. We got all of the center blocking going across there. Now I don't believe that is necessary. However, it helped straighten up a lot of these 2x6s. A lot of these were just kind of all weird and wonky. And now that I'm looking at that center blocking, that one's a little bit weird and wonky. I'm gonna straighten that bad boy out a little bit. And it just helps to kind of rigidify everything. Again, I don't think it's necessary. I don't know. It just made sense to me. So this is the part that takes the longest. All the little details you have to think of, right? All of the areas, like when we go to put our OSB sheathing on the side here, we got to have spots to nail into. Well, obviously you can see right there, we've got a big old gap and there's nothing on the top to nail to. So I'm putting in all of these little boogers right here, which all have to be cut at an angle. And I'm not even gonna fight trying to squeeze something small in on that side. Honestly, this is the part that I hate the most. It's just so many little details. We did all of our blocking on the front right there. And then we still have to do that backside. Those we have to cut, and then we're gonna rip down on the table saw. Because obviously we notched that 2x6, so that is not a full 5.5 inches right there. We are, however, out of 2x6 material. So Papa Rhino is picking up a bunch of stuff for me. He's picking up all of our plywood sheathing. He's picking up some more 2x6s, he's picking up more screws. Hoping by today, I know for sure, we should have the roof on. Not 100% sure exactly how far we're gonna get, but we're gonna give it a good go. We've been having to dodge the rain here and there. Every time it rains, we have to kind of step aside for a minute. I think the rain's passing us. We got some blue skies, so back to work we go. Now, for these angled guys, I am just following the stud layout down below. Hopefully this is not in the way and you guys can actually see. Just transferring my marks up here. Help if I had some lead. I like to use a mechanical pencil. I know a lot of people use carpenter's pencils, but for this type of stuff, it's not, you don't need to be 1,000,000% precise, but if you guys are doing any finer woodworking or carpentry work, a freaking mechanical pencil. They're super cheap. Get the 0.7mm lead, and you don't have to sharpen them. They're always a nice, fine line, and if you lose them, who cares, because you can buy them in like a 10-pack for a couple bucks. This is as far as I can reach from the ladder. We already figured out our angle on that side for the saw. So basically I just come in and I measure to the high side. So obviously we have an angle, right? Like this. This is obviously exaggerated, but I'm gonna measure to the high side. So we got 10 and an eighth. 10 and an eighth. Come over here. We've got 8 and 5/8 fat. 8, 5/8 fat. And when I say fat or shy, that means add a 16th. So it'd really be 8 and 11/16, which who wants to do that, right? So 8 and 5/8 fat. It's an easier, quicker way to find 16ths. And then we've got 7 and 1/4. 1/4, okay. Then Abel's got my marking pad ready. 8, 5/8 fat. So on the saw, we figured out on the other side is a 6-degree angle, give or take. Now remember, we're measuring to our high side, so if we are going to be cutting with the saw blade right now at that angle, we need to measure and put it at the furthest point of that angle is where our mark needs to go for our measurement for this to be accurate. So we go 11.5. Do I have that out of this? I do. So I'm going to put my mark right on that edge. And then with the Milwaukee saw, it's nice because it projects the line where the saw blade is, as you can see right there. But if you don't have that, it's a little more of an eyeball game. And what I like to do on saws like that is cut it a little further away. So just make a cut. And then you kind of ease it over a little bit until you get exactly where you need to be. And there we go. We've got our little bit of an angle cut. Well, it's actually gonna go that way. Now, when you're in these tight little areas, it's not the easiest to screw these in. This one's not too bad, but I've been coming up from underneath in this top plate. They seem to be biting pretty well that way. And then same from the top. On the other side, I was working from the outside and I was coming in from the outside and it was grabbing it good. But I don't feel like working inside of a orange tree today. So we'll go that way. Super solid. Now for the blocking that is going to go on this side, obviously we notched that side so much that we don't have a full 2x6. So we're going to rip them down on my table saw. And it's one of the few tools I don't have cordless yet. I just don't use them enough to justify spending another $500 or whatever it is on a cordless one. So for now, the skill saw one works. This was the first worm drive table saw. I bought it right when it came out because to me worm drives are stronger, and I gotta say I love this saw. This thing gets left outside, it's been used and abused, and it still works perfectly. Now on this side, we knew we only needed to take off like 1/8, and I didn't have the blade for my table saw set up, and I couldn't find the blade for my table saw, so we decided we're gonna put them in and then plane it later. So we have the Milwaukee 18-volt cordless planer, and should make pretty quick work of knocking these down. Maybe see him, or
he's just decided.
It's gonna be más arriba, okay. Get it? Split up the. Okay. Well, I'm happy to say all of the blocking, I think all the blocking is done. I'm sure we'll find something we missed, but now we are moving on to sheathing the roof. So I've got some 5/8 plywood. That's what we're gonna use for the roof, and then we're gonna use 3/8 OSB all the way around the outside. When we're putting these sheets on, we're gonna split the seam right on whatever 2x6 it lands on. So that one's gonna land right there. I'm gonna mark it real quick, and then we will rip it with the skill saw. I really don't like cutting things up on a roof. No me gusta. So I'm using 1 5/8 exterior grade screws. Well, as Willie says, hello behind me. We are pretty much wrapped up with the roof. I had a really nice time lapse going, and the battery died like right into it. And I didn't feel like coming back off the roof to go change the batteries. I just wanted to get this knocked out. So I'll go up on the ladder in a second and show you the top, but definitely feels a whole lot different when you actually put the plywood up on the roof. Pretty excited about it though. It went a lot smoother than I had anticipated. Again, having people on the ground making cuts is just, yeah, from doing a lot of this stuff by myself, that makes a huge, huge difference. So there is still a little rip we have to put on this end, which we'll put on tomorrow. No big deal, but look at that. That's a good amount of roof space there. And it's almost right at the peak of that is very similar height to the house roof right there. I was standing in this thing, I'm like, man, I made this thing pretty tall, but for scale wise, I'm glad I did. I think it looks good next to the house versus just plopping any old shed next to your house. We are inside, looking good, looking good. We've got Gunner coming out to inspect. Everything look good, buddy? Yeah, everything looks good. So in the morning, we're gonna jump on sheathing all of the sides, and we should have this thing pretty much closed up. Now, I feel like in every single video, I'm wearing the exact same outfit. It's probably getting repetitive. Probably looks like I filmed this whole thing in one day. I wish I could do all of that in one day. You know, I gotta say, the lifesaver out here is this work for it canvas jacket. You know, it's on par there with the Carhartt quality, but a better name. So today we're gonna finish up the last little bit of the roof. We're gonna be putting those little 3.5-inch strips up there. You can hear the generator running behind me because, well, again, we are without power. That is the second time this week. They are constantly replacing power lines, doing maintenance and all kinds of stuff out here, so we constantly lose power. But let's get the table saw set up. We're just gonna rip down some strips. Now you'll see on the fence of the table saw, there is a guide for measurements. We never use those. We always go off of an actual tape measure and we measure to the furthest side of that tooth. So if you find yourself using a saw and your measurements are coming just a hair off, usually this is the reason. Again, measure to the furthest side that that tooth comes out to, and that's gonna get you perfect. Get this last board screwed on, and then we can officially call this thing done. All of our field screwing is done. I just did 6 inches around the edges and then 12 inches in the centers of the boards. We are now ready to start sheathing our sides. For this, I'm just using 3/8 OSB. I know we're already overbuilding this thing, so, you know, a little bit lighter on the OSB. I'm gonna let it overhang the slab just a smidge, just a 1/4 inch. Some people prefer them to overhang. Normally you'd have stem walls where the concrete coming down here would be up higher, about 4 to 6 inches. From there, we could overhang more and not really worry about moisture wicking, but from anything splashing off the roof or in planters or anything like that. But because we didn't put any stem walls on this, I don't want to come down too far and a bunch of moisture gets up underneath there and kind of wicks its way in. Let's retry the time lapse that we tried to do on the roof and see how it goes. ¿Está bien, Evo, or no?
Chécale, es poquito aquí. Ahí es closet, aquí está bien.
Piquito más short is no problema.
No, ahí, aquí sope.
Alrighty guys, so we're getting our last big sheet on, then we got to cut all these little triangles to go up there. I know technically you're supposed to tie the top plate in with a full sheet, but considering we have so much more to go up, I think it's just going to work out this way. Getting this first sheet up is always a little bit of a pain, trying to, you know, hold it in the right spot at the right elevation. But then I just use a screw, you can use a nail, whatever, set it on top. That gives us our 1/8 gap right there. And then the next sheets, they just sit on top of that and it goes a lot quicker. Now for these angled cuts, I'm just making a little rough drawing. We know we want to be 8 foot over. And yes, we still need to finish screwing this all the way off. But if we come over from here, It's 8 foot land where it should. It does not, because I built this wall and then slammed that other one on top of it, so the layout didn't exactly work out. So we know now we're gonna be about 94.5, splits that stud. So on our drawing, we're going to be 94.5 from there to there, which we know is not gonna end in a perfect pie shape, like a point like that. It's gonna end up being something like that. So let's figure that out now that we know we're right here. We will come over, measure up, and yes, we're not really gonna have anything to screw into here. I could put another board there, but it is what it is. We're gonna go 7 7/8. I'm gonna leave a quarter so we have a little bit of room on the top and bottom. So coming over here, we know this side is 7 7/8 for right there to right there. Now we got to go lay this out on the plywood and make sure we're in the proper orientation. We want these lines to be facing on the outside, and then we want a factory edge down here, which obviously we're going to have, and also the factory edge to be on, well, it's actually better on this side. You'll notice if you ever cut this stuff, Abel's not a carpenter. He's not like super experienced ripping plywood perfectly straight. So to make your life easier, instead of having to deal with a cut side on a factory side, which, let me see, I know we have one of those right here. That cut was actually pretty decent. One of these got a little bit wonky on us. I think it was this one. So you can see this is the cut side, which it's not perfect. And again, like, it doesn't really need to be that perfect, but we've got a cut side to a factory edge. It's better if you put factory edge to factory edge if you can. So right here, you can see the green or blue, whatever that is, on each side, which makes for a much straighter line. And then we put our cut side on the outside, which doesn't really matter. Again, it's a little detail, but it makes these 1/8 inch seams that we're leaving look a little bit more uniform than if we were to try to follow somebody running a circ saw down one of these edges. So we're gonna come over 94.5. That is our bottom measurement. 94.5. We got just shy of being a full sheet. From here, we're gonna come up 7 7/8. I'm gonna cheat it just a little bit smaller, because I'd rather not have to recut this if we're a little big. Then on this side, we're going to be 16 3/4. We'll just use this as my straight edge for right now. And then tú ponle de chocolate aquí, okay? We're going to use our chalk line to snap this mark. ¿Listo? Dos tiempos. Abel. Ponle la escalera más aquí para allá. Alrighty, y'all, let's see if she fits. Está, Abel.
Está.
Chécale, este es medio.
Sí.
Okay, we've got all of our sheathing on. Now we need to cut out the rest of the windows. On this front piece, I just hung 2 pieces. We've got a 4-foot section there, like a 6-foot section there. To me, it's easier to put them in place, and then a lot of framers have now moved to using routers, and they'll route out the opening, but if you don't have a router, a Sawzall works just as good. You could sit there and mark this out and try to cut it before you actually hang the piece like you would, say, drywall in certain instances, but to me, this is way more accurate. You're not dealing with things getting a little bit cockeyed and a little bit weird and your joints being like super messed up. Put it in place and then just follow along with your framing, with the Sawzall. Oh, well, this brace is gonna screw us a little bit, but these braces can come out once I fully nail off these sheets. So basically in the old school days, before they actually plywooded houses and had shear walls and all that, your framing is gonna wanna do this, right? It's gonna wanna rack in different ways. So if you look at old school framing, you'll see that they actually take a diagonal like that and they notch all of those 2x4s and inset the diagonal from like corner to corner, and that creates a shear wall, and that's what keeps your walls from doing this. Nowadays, using OSB or plywood, screwing that to the outside or shooting that into the outside, that's what keeps your house from doing this. So I left those braces on until we fully attach all the plywood and nail every single stud on the outside. Then we can pull those braces off, and now the building will no longer want to do this, and everything will stay plumb like we have it locked in. Anyways, I just come in with my Sawzall and just follow this edge. Sometimes it digs in a little bit. You can see it bites a little bit, but it's not gonna be a big deal when we actually put our windows in. Get a little wild with it here. And you can plunge cut with a Sawzall. So instead of trying to like get to this corner and try to open up a hole so you can turn the Sawzall, just plunge cut it. Take your Sawzall, rest it on something, start a little bit off of your material, and work your way in, and you will cut through it. And we got a window. What do you think, horse? Is it a good window? Is that gonna work for you? All right. Next window done. Now for openings like this, you can see I got a little bit wonky right there, and the plywood comes down into the opening a little bit. We don't want that. It's better to be a little bit smaller than it is to be bigger into the opening. Hopefully you guys can see that, and the camera's pointing at the right spot. Reason being is, like right here, we're gonna put a 2x6, that's gonna be our trim, that's gonna go and trim out the garage door. Well, if we have stuff like this, when we go to put that in there and we try to get it squared up, it's gonna fight us. So I'm gonna come back with the planer and touch that up, but when I'm holding the Sawzall, I try to keep it a little bit of an angle out that way. It's also why I don't really mind digging into the 2x4 framing a little bit, because it's better to be smaller than it is to stick out bigger, if that makes sense. Let's see if we can clean up my horrendous cut there with the planer. And one thing I just noticed about this thing, I don't know how I didn't notice it before, but you can basically switch what side you want the dust to shoot out of. That's pretty cool, because I was sitting there being like, man, if this thing's right here above my head, it's gonna shoot right in my face. But no, you could switch what side the dust shoots out of. Good idea. Oh, now we gotta shift it to the other side. Now obviously you saw that I used screws when we were putting all the panels up, and I like to use screws because, again, in case something gets a little bit crooked, we can just back the screw out, readjust it, versus nails, you are very, very committed. But that being said, I'm gonna go nail off all the field, that way I'm not sitting here putting in 10,000 screws. Nails are also significantly cheaper. So the reason I wanted to screw the entire roof off though is because I didn't want to see anything exposed up underneath. And when you're nailing, you know, you can get a little wild sometimes. And you can miss your rafter, you can miss your stud, but the studs and the wall, it's not the end of the world, because we are going to be doing some type of surface on the walls inside there. But we'll get this all nailed off. So I switched over to 2 3/8 nails to nail the rest of this off. It is also insanely faster to just rock through with the nail gun versus the screws. Now, I don't know how it works where you guys are at, but a lot of the big job sites I've been on, a lot of custom homes, usually the framing crew has a separate guy that comes in to do all the sheathing. And that's, again, putting all the OSB or plywood or whatever it is on the exterior of the house. And the guys that I've seen, they fly solo. It's one guy, he shows up in a beat up old Ranger, he's got a gas powered air compressor in the back, and they'll sheet the whole damn house, a whole roof by themselves. It is impressive. You saw me and Abel today, you know, one guy to kind of help hold you, kind of align it, and it's still not the most fun thing to do, even having a helper, but I see these guys just rock out houses by themselves. I am blown away by the skill level. That's some talent to sheathe the whole house by yourself. But yeah, it was always something that just kind of blew me away watching, but you guys can see, getting dark, pretty much run out of daylight for today. Just go take a look at the pool project that we still need to finish putting our heads around. I've got my sweet floating chlorine thingy that's solar and it looks like a flickering candle. Bought that on Amazon for like 20 bucks. I need to move my mat. That needs to go back under the steps. The water's been way too chilly to jump in there. That's been there for like a month. Nobody wants to volunteer to be the one to jump in there and grab it and put it underneath. But that goes underneath the steps just to make sure that they don't rub and end up putting a hole in the liner, even though they don't really move. Beautiful night here at the ranch. Pool deck looking killer. I love these little solar lights, man. These things are great. You can see Papa Rhino on the back behind me leaving. I ordered some really cool lights that we're gonna put in the soffits on the shed. So those will get here tomorrow. But we're pretty much all done with the sheathing. Next step is we need to do waterproofing for the windows. I'm waiting to get a price back to do the roofing. We're getting the stucco lined up. But I think our biggest delay is going to be windows. I think that's gonna take probably about 2 weeks for them to get here once we order them. My plan is to do black windows. And those take longer and they're significantly more expensive, of course, because God forbid, why would I do anything cheaper? But before we enclose those soffits up underneath, we still do need to plywood those. We need to make sure I run the wiring for the soffit lighting. So I don't have to wait for the next video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're not subscribed already, please click the subscribe button now that you do not miss out on any future content. Don't forget to give this video a like, a thumbs up. Don't forget to check out workforapparel.com because if there's anything you want in this life, you gotta be willing to work for it. You guys are the best. I'm out.
Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.